Before Tony Arcudi made some of Napa Valley's most admired wines, he helped navigate missiles aboard United States Navy submarines. Then he became a technology product manager at IBM. And at 38, after roughly 20 years in computer-related work, he decided he might have spent his adult life doing the wrong thing. So he got into a car in Massachusetts and drove west. No winery was waiting, no family vineyard, almost no wine resume, just a stubborn conviction that he had to try.
The idea began years earlier with a glass of Chateau Neuf du Pape. Tony grew up around food, cooking with his mother and helping in his father's garden, but this wine hit differently. He has described it as the moment wine stopped being merely a beverage and became an experience. Most of us taste a great bottle and think, I should buy another. Tony apparently began questioning his entire employment situation. He did not quit immediately. The question followed him for nearly a decade. If wine is the calling, how long can you keep postponing it?
In 2001, the postponement ended. Picture the resume traveling across America. Navy missile navigation, IBM, technology. Under wine experience, almost nothing. There was one additional problem. The University of California at Davis initially rejected him. His background did not resemble the usual path into viticulture and enology. Tony went to Napa Valley College, rebuilt the academic foundation he needed, and applied again. This time, Davis accepted him. Then the student once considered too unconventional earned a Regents Scholarship, departmental recognition, and a fellowship.
That reversal tells you a great deal about him. Tony was not 19, following the obvious next step. He had already built a secure career and was deliberately volunteering to become a beginner again. After Davis, he trained at Maison M. Chapoutier in France's Rhône Valley. Chapoutier reinforced an idea that would become central to his work. Great wine begins with place. Do not force every vineyard to make the wine you imagined. First understand what that vineyard is capable of saying.
Back in Napa, Tony became assistant winemaker at Nickel & Nickel, working across roughly 25 single vineyard wines. That is almost an engineer's terroir laboratory. Keep the broad category familiar, often Cabernet Sauvignon, but change the site. Elevation changes, soil changes, exposure, water, temperature, vigor, tannin, all change. Then observe the result and repeat. Same grape, different place, different wine. For someone trained to think in variables and systems, the vineyard became an extraordinarily complicated experiment that nature allows you to run only once a year.
In 2009, Tony met Heidi Barrett at a winemakers conference, and they connected quickly and he joined Fantesca, working alongside one of the defining winemakers of modern Napa. Barrett's resume includes estates such as Screaming Eagle and Napa Valley. Tony took responsibility for Fantesca's King Richard's Reserve Pinot Noir and collaborated across the portfolio. He had gone from asking Davis to let him study wine to working beside a Napa legend. But the most revealing part of this story is not the resume. It is the way Tony explains how a winery actually works.
I once spent an afternoon sitting with Tony at Fantesca. We talked about vines, rootstocks, grafting, farming, and winemaking. Then he gave me an idea that changed how I think about every bottle. Great wine is a negotiation. The owner, the vineyard manager, and the winemaker may all want an extraordinary wine, but they are optimizing different things, and the owner carries the whole enterprise: quality, payroll, inventory, reputation, and long-term survival. That is not cynicism. It is the reality that allows the vineyard to exist next year.
The vineyard manager lives inside biology: vine health, irrigation, disease, canopy, pests, labor, ripening, and weather. Then the winemaker arrives and says, I want fewer grapes. Drop fruit, split the block. Wait another week. Pick earlier. Make a choice that may be beautiful inside a bottle and inconvenient everywhere else. The genius of a great winery is not eliminating those competing objectives. It is getting business, agriculture, and taste to overlap in one bottle. Hundreds of decisions made by people with different risks somehow have to become a coherent wine.
Tony's engineering brain is visible here. He thinks in systems. Change yield, and something downstream changes. Change harvest timing, and chemistry changes. Change one person's constraint, and another person's options change. Wine likes the romance of a solitary genius in a cellar. The truth is more interesting. Biology, plus economics, plus weather, plus personalities, plus taste, plus risk. Nature does not particularly care about anyone's spreadsheet, and yet the final bottle has to feel effortless. What Tony showed me was that collaboration and productive tension are not distractions from great wine. They are part of how great wine gets made.
The conversation became even geekier when Tony explained grafted vines. Many vineyard vines are not genetically one plant from top to bottom. Underground is the rootstock. Above a visible graft union is the scion, the fruiting variety, perhaps Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Chardonnay, or Grenache. Rootstock can affect resistance to pests such as phylloxera, vigor, drought response, water uptake, and adaptation to soil. The scion determines the grape. So, a vine everyone casually calls Cabernet Sauvignon may effectively be Cabernet growing on another grapevine's root system.
Once you understand that, another hidden layer of vineyard decision-making appears. Who chose the rootstock? Why that one? How vigorous will the combination become? How will it behave under water stress? Tony could turn a technical fact into a practical question about what eventually reaches your glass. This is his recurring method. Separate the system into parts, understand the relationships, and then put it back together without losing the mystery. Precision is not the enemy of pleasure. If anything, understanding the mechanism makes the improbable result, a living vineyard transformed into wine, more astonishing.
Eventually, Tony put his own name on a bottle. Arcudi Wines focused on site-specific wines, including Cabernet from Howell Mountain. The label was appropriately restrained. Arcudi, no invented chateau, no gold lion fighting a stag beneath a Latin motto, just his name and the vineyard. He also created Terramagra, originally as a more accessible wine for the ordinary weeknight. Customers kept asking what they should drink every day, and Tony eventually decided that instead of recommending somebody else's bottle, he could make one.
The name carries its own story. Terramagra means lean or meager earth, the difficult soils in which grapevines can thrive, and it connects to Tony's family through his mother's side. Something worthwhile emerging from difficult ground is not a bad metaphor for a man who started over at 38. And then came the Grenache. As I remember Tony telling it, a truckload of interesting Grenache became available. This was not the conclusion of a 10-year brand strategy. Fruit appeared, curiosity won, and Tony essentially said, let's make wine.
That Grenache became one of the most fabulous examples the author had ever tasted. Here is the author's own photograph of the 2021 Terramagra Grenache from Baci Gal Lupi vineyard in the Russian River Valley. The bottle matters because it shows the counterweight to all Tony's precision. Winemaking needs systems, education, and judgment. It also needs openness to serendipity. Unfortunately, Arcudi later closed the label, and this wine was not repeated as a continuing release. Which illustrates another law of wine. The moment you discover something wonderful is often approximately the moment somebody stops making it.
In 2016, Tony joined Kapcsándy Family Winery as consulting winemaker, after coming to the family's attention through Heidi Barrett. The fit is almost too neat. Lou Kapcsándy had an engineering background. The family's State Lane vineyard is run with obsessive attention to detail. Tony arrived with French training, single vineyard Napa experience, years beside Barrett, and an obsession with site expression. Kapcsándy describes Tony as part of a blending panel with the family. Final approval remains with the family. Great wine, again, is collaboration and negotiation, not one person imposing a will.
Roberta's Reserve is a beautiful example of that philosophy and of what Merlot can become when treated as a first-class wine rather than Cabernet's supporting actor. It comes from State Lane Vineyard and is named for Lou's wife, Roberta Bobby Kapcsándy. The site once supplied admired Beringer wine before phylloxera devastated the old vines. The Kapcsándy family acquired and replanted it. Tony did not arrive to erase that history. He joined an exacting family operation and proved capable of interpreting what the vineyard was giving them now.
The scores followed. Fantesca says Tony earned multiple 100-point ratings early in his Kapcsándy tenure. One documented example is the 2018 Grapevine State Lane Vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon, awarded 100 points by Robert Parker's wine advocate. Mention the score, then move on. The more interesting question is how expertise accumulates. A cook can roast another chicken tomorrow. A winemaker gets one harvest. 10 years may mean only 10 major repetitions. 10 weather patterns, 10 ripening seasons, 10 chances to make irreversible decisions, while fruit is changing by the hour.
Tony has joked about becoming an overnight success after roughly 10 years. It lands because wine compresses experience so slowly. You cannot order another September. You wait. You observe. You remember. Then, 1 year later, nature changes the variables and asks a different question. That is why mature winemaking judgment is so difficult to imitate. The laboratory never gives you exactly the same experiment twice. Comment below. Which matters more in a winemaker, technical training, instinct, or the accumulated memory of vintages?
In 2025, Heidi Barrett departed Fantesca. and Tony was appointed consulting winemaker, overseeing the portfolio with the estate team, including associate winemaker Chelsea Hoff. Think about that arc. In 2009, he meets Barrett, joins her, learns, collaborates, and develops. 16 years later, he helps lead the program she leaves behind. The man whose route into wine once looked implausible is now entrusted with carrying forward two of Napa's most exacting winemaking traditions, Fantesca's estate on Spring Mountain and Kapcsándy's State Lane Vineyard.
Tony once described those early decades as a long detour before wine. But perhaps engineering was never the detour. A vineyard is a system. Change the rootstock, yield, harvest date, barrel, or blend, and effects travel downstream. Every participant has an objective. Nature supplies constraints nobody controls. Their job is to turn the complicated system into something that feels simple when it reaches your glass. And every once in a while, after all the analysis and precision, a truckload of Grenache appears. And you say yes. Maybe great wine really is systems engineering with better lunches. Subscribe for more stories behind the bottle.